Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to AIPAD Talks Depth of Field, a series of conversations between AIPAD member galleries and their artists. I'm Irene Papaifthimiou. I'm the Associate Director of the Photography Show, which is presented by AIPAD. And before we get started, as we wait for some more people to join us, I would like to encourage viewers to check out AIPAD Talks on our YouTube channel, which includes our programming from the photography show this past April, including guests such as Arthur Elgort, Michael Stipe, and Tommy Ka, who is a recent Guggenheim Fellow. We hope you'll join us for the 2026 edition of the fair, taking place in New York from April 22nd to the 26th at the Park Avenue Armory once again. Today's talk features artists Jane Hilton and Michael Hulett of the Hulett Collection. If you have any questions for Jane and Michael, please send them to the Q&A and your questions will be answered towards the end of the talk. And now I would like to hand it over to Michael Hulett and Jane Hilton. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Irene, for that wonderful introduction. We're super excited to be here today. And I am Michael Hulett. We are here in the Hulett Collection Gallery in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with acclaimed photographer Jane Hilton, who is opening her show Cowboys and Queens tomorrow night here in the gallery. I'm going to let Jane take it from here and give you all some background on how this series came to be.
Hi. To start off with, obviously, thank you, Michael. Very excited about tomorrow and opening night. And this show has already had a kind of, yes, a frisson of electric people wanting to know more and more about it. But in order to start the presentation, I felt like I had to give you some sort of context as to how this came about. So I'm born and bred in London, and I studied music and art at university in England and was torn between whether I should do music. I was a pianist or art, and I learned photography, and the photography won, hands down, and I have not regretted it. I started out as a photographer's assistant. I was on many, many fashion shoots, and the first shoot, or one of the first shoots, travel-wise, was coming to America, and I went to Arizona, and then my whole world changed. Basically, the light, the people, the culture, and from a kind of small town in England outside of London, which is where I grew up, it exploded with kind of big views, desert, mountains, and so I never looked back. So my first trip was to Bisbee, Arizona, on a fashion shoot where I was allowed, it was a long trip, it was 3 weeks. And in the middle of it, we got a day off. So I went into Bisbee, Arizona, and I met this gentleman here, which is my very first portrait. And although I kind of did a lot of fashion shoots, portraiture, I didn't realize then, documentary, interesting people was my thing. And so I became hooked by interesting characters like Walter. And Walter was an extraordinary man who'd written his own book. No one would publish it. The bank wouldn't give him a loan. And so he managed to raise the money, publish the book, and it was a real success called Me and Henry, about these little stories he'd tell his grandchildren. And then no one would sell it after he managed to publish it. So he opened his own shop called the One Book Bookstore. And he ended up on the David Letterman show in 1990. That just shows you how long ago it was. And he won the Entrepreneur of the America Award. And he was kind of like, really like the first ever portrait of an American person. So then I went to do other things, and on my jobs, I became my very own commissioning, doing commissioned work, working in America, And wherever I could, I would take time out and take documentary, social pictures of people and things that I was interested in. And this is in Virginia City. This is the chaos, you know, it's a kind of very, very touristy town now. But, you know, back in the day when it had all the gold and people mining, it was, yeah, this, and I shot mainly in black and white, which was the thing in those days. Yeah, and so I always kept this personal work around. So much so that I then started to go to bigger, you know, broaden the travel out. And I went to Texas and started to do my own projects. And this one was the deer hunters from Texas Hill Country. And that was another extraordinary project, which I did for a while. And I was still shooting in black and white. And I was traveling, and I was also doing commissioned work. So I went out originally as a fashion photographer. So Marks and Spencer's commissioned me to do a swimsuit campaign in the middle of the sand dunes in Baker, which you probably know, in California, but we stayed in Vegas. And I'd never been to Vegas before, so was obviously shocked. And also just, it arose my interest in this, you know, spectacle, and to the extreme that people would go. And then on particularly in that shoot that I was shooting M&S, we were traveling outside and coming back to Vegas to stay at night. And on the 14th of February, there were all these wedding couples, and I was staying in the hacienda at the time, and looking out the window, I could see one in the gazebo, one in the chapel, one getting out of the limousine. And I was so confused and kind of went, well, what is going on? And of course, then discovered that 2,500 couples came to Vegas specifically on Valentine's Day to get the date in the certificate. So this led me to thinking, this is quite extraordinary. So I ended up doing a project about the McDonald's style weddings, which went on for about 7 years. And then I followed every chapel. So not only did I photograph about 117 couples, I think, I was witness to several, as well as taking pictures, but it was always a happy day, and it was a very good project as far as people wanting to have their photos done. And I obviously sent them all the pictures afterwards. And yes, it was really quite something. But I did like bungee jump weddings to roller coaster weddings, minister on wheels, went out into the middle of the desert. And the chapels were obviously quite extraordinary as well. They were quite kitsch. Like this one is the Angel Chapel. And I ended up doing a lot of other chapels that were there at the time. I think I documented all of them, which was about 26 chapels at the time. And I have revisited recently, and they are still going. Now, some of them have obviously, they're not there anymore, they don't exist. So it's a kind of real unique document of that time, which was in the late 90s. But most of my projects also were always discovered on road trips and during travel. There wasn't so much internet then, and yes, I had to do it kind of literally on the hoof. So I would always kind of drive out and find new projects. One of which was, this is my car actually. I went and then did a project in Nevada, and I actually lived in Nevada for about a year. BBC commissioned me. I went from kind of stills and my own photography, and then I was commissioned by the BBC to do 10 films, which were called Love for Sale, and I lived in a brothel in Carson City, or outside Carson City. And it took 2.5 years to make those 10 films. So that kind of shaped me quite a lot, really, as you can imagine. But it was always travel, and although I loved the filming and I could tell the stories I wanted to tell, because obviously a still photograph, a lot of the pictures, while you sit with them and you're curious and they might kind of like speak to you, the stories that the girls had to tell and some of the punters were so fascinating that I felt compelled to go into film, which was a turning point. But my love of photography is probably stronger than that. So I returned to the camera as much as I could, um, which led me to kind of going back on the road. And then I met Jeremiah, who is the cowboy in this picture. I was road tripping, and the Times newspaper knew I was out somewhere in the American West. So they contacted me and said, we need to have a photograph taken of Jeremiah, who was an extraordinary cowboy. He was 19 at the time, and he'd gone from Alaska, which was his hometown, and he crossed the Mexican border. It took him 2.5 years, totally on horseback, which was very difficult at the time. So he'd have to go on mostly on highways, and he earned his money breaking in the horses, which you see behind him, which he picked up on the desert, running wild, mostly Mustangs, and he'd break them in and then sell them to the ranches for a few thousand, and it would pay him to carry on to the next state. And he did that his entire trip. And this image, weirdly, has become quite iconic, and it kind of celebrates the American dream and speaks volumes of hope and potential to most other cowboys. The old cowboys, they really respected him. And so from doing that image, I then met all the other cowboys that looked up to this young guy called Jeremiah. And this started my own project, and this ended up as a book called Dead Eagle Trail. And this cowboy here, Alan, he had a passion for John Wayne, and so he basically dressed his house in all the John Wayne's memorabilia that he had. And I then started realizing that the interiors, which I'd never seen the home of a cowboy, so it was new to me, but I had no idea that they brought all the kind of lifestyle inside from outside. So whether it was belt buckles or stuffed animals or spurs or whatever it was, it all ended up inside. So this elk that he shot basically sits through his window because he couldn't get it through the door. So it ended up as it is, as you see it now. But this became, I realized, was so fascinating. And then I met other people who had similar ranches. Oh yeah, no, that were like that. So that gives you the background to where we are now. So the cowboy book was really well received, and I seem to have kind of got a thing about the American West. I think it's an understatement, but I then I still spend lots of time in Vegas, especially recently because I discovered the drag queen culture, and I went to a drag bingo night, and then basically was just so taken with the whole crafting of it, and it's an art form in itself. And they make all their own costumes, they do all their own choreography, they lip sync, and obviously hair, makeup, wigs, you name it. So I then decided I really wanted to photograph them, spoke to them, and but I didn't want to do it in the clubs and the nightclubs that they spend all their time in. And then most of the imagery for drag queens is all color. It's kind of artificial lighting, it's retouched, and it's quite leery. And so I decided I would think of a way of photographing them to see more about themselves and how they come out behind the mask and behind their craft, that they craft themselves wearing all these clothes. So I gave them, in the end, it was a collaboration. I gave them a brief, and I decided that John Huston's Misfits film that was done in 1961 became a kind of inspiration for me, because Arthur Miller had written this script, and it was about displacement in Nevada and how people found themselves in Nevada, and it was a kind of in the middle of the desert and piecing themselves together, and it seemed to fit, and I wanted to shoot it in black and white, and I wanted to shoot it with the natural light of the West, all the things that they'd never done. So they were very brave to allow me to do it, to be honest. So I ended up finding the places that they shot the film in and photographing the drag queens, and they would bring their own outfits, and sometimes they would make them specially. So it became a collaboration, and that started a separate project, which I'm still doing, and in fact it's almost finished. And then we now have Cowboys and Queens. So this came about because I had a show at the Palo Gallery in New York called LA Gun Club, which was about the American gun culture. And I met Guylain Pascal from the Little Black Gallery, who I knew really well. He was a good friend, and he was there for an opening at Fotografiska. So we went out, and Michael Fry, I met Michael Fry then, and we were all talking. He was from Vegas. I had no idea that there was such a great gallery called Fryboy Saloon in Las Vegas. And obviously we got talking, and all my work fitted, and I was explaining about the Cowboys and explaining about the drag queens. And this is where Cowboys and Queens was born. And between Guylain and Michael, they were collaborators, and we decided we would do this show, and it would tour America, and that's where we are today. And that's how I met Michael Hulett.
Yes, so we needed somewhere perfectly spaced between East Coast, West Coast, and what better place than Tulsa, Oklahoma, the heart of the Midwest.
Yeah, so there is a limited edition book, which I should say, which the Little Black Gallery published, which has been it's really beautiful. There's only 200 copies, but I'm really proud of it. And yeah, and so Cowboys and Queens is alive and kicking, and it is just the frisson between both a kind of like the drag queens and the cowboys is a natural kind of like they kind of spin off each other, really. And the cowboys, I'm looking around the gallery in a minute, a lot of them I already photographed sat on their beds, which is not where you would normally see them. So it's very similar. The drag queens is not where you'd normally see them either. They're not in the clubs, they're out in the desert. So it seems, for me, it's a really good fit, and it works really well together. And it basically shows you a different way of seeing things. So people have their own ideas of cowboys and what it means to them and how they see them. But I'm hoping that these imagery, they give a different way of viewing and a different side of people that you probably had never considered. So the cowboys sitting at home in their beds or on their beds is not where they're not saddled up and, you know, going to go do branding or working on a ranch. Yeah, so this is, yes, Cowboys and Queens reflects the new modern day American dream, a utopian cocktail that is the freedom and stance of the iconic working cowboy with the flamboyance and inventiveness of the drag queen. This is exactly as I see it, and it is a cocktail. And for me, it's a good cocktail.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing is you've taken these two genres that I think most people are familiar with in some aspect now, the American West, the old time stoic cowboy, and then the current drag queen culture, and you flipped it on its head. So you
Yeah.
have these beautiful color interiors that are very just sort of intimate and sensitive and feminine in a way where you created these portraits of these cowboys. And then on the flip side, you have these drag queens in their with horses in their costumes that they've made out on the dusty dirt road. And it's a beautiful blend. It's the old becoming what is new.
Yeah, it's definitely new. I mean, I have to commend the drag queens for having faith in me and allowing me to photograph them in these situations because, and obviously this one here, she did ride and it is like the flip side and it just shows you a softer side, I think, maybe, and a more, rather than it being all brash and loud, it gives you time to kind of consider what a craft it is to be able to dress up like that and be able to look like a woman so easily. And obviously it's not easy, but I think yes, it kind of gives you stop to look for a longer period of time and see the the skill set that they have to have in order to be able to do it in the first place. Um,
And so I wanted to ask, as you approach, how difficult was it for you to kind of assemble this group of drag queens and where they agreed to stand for these portraits, where they agreed to create their costume? Was it easy? Were they
uh,
all kind of champing at the bit, or did you have to get in with one and take photos, and then the other one saw the photos and they were excited to join?
yeah, no, they were up for it because they love having their photo taken, weirdly, but they do, because that is part of being a drag queen.
Yeah.
But the worst thing was basically because they worked all night and I wanted to shoot them at sunrise or sunset. It was very difficult because it was they were always working or they were asleep. And so getting time with them was the most difficult thing. So and of course, I was out in the States for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And quite often I would only come home with maybe 5 or 6 portraits because it was too complicated. They couldn't meet the times that they were available. So, and I would just have to sit and wait, obviously, because yeah, they didn't get paid, I might add. It was a pure documentary project.
One thing I found interesting is, I've said that I think a lot of American culture is familiar with drag queens and the skill sets that they have and what they have to do to get ready. And part of that is because of RuPaul's Drag Race. It kind of brought it to the mainstream. And I noticed, if I'm not mistaken, none of the drag queens, none of the performers in your portrait series are Ru girls who have ever performed or
There are,
competed on. There are?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Alexis Mateo is part of this project, or I wonder whether I don't know where Alexis is on the presentation, but
Oh, Alexis behind us
she
in the car.
is, yes, in the car.
You guys can't see her, but she's over my shoulder.
Yeah, and she was really well known and became well known because of RuPaul. They are all very grateful and thankful to RuPaul, as you can imagine, and there's still, that is their goal, is to get onto the RuPaul Drag Race. That is, very, very much their aim. Yeah, I think, and a lot of them have done really, really well post my project, really. There's Mirage, which is she's in the back, in the desert, quite big. She's really successful now, as is Anitra. So there are a few that I photographed that weren't well known at the time and have now got millions of followers on Instagram and have done really well. And now I can't speak to them because they're traveling the world, like one gig after another.
Do any of the Cowboys, are any of the Cowboys aware that the series exists now in this capacity?
A few.
And how's their reaction been to it?
That's a good question. I haven't spoken to them completely about it.
I'm putting you on blast right now.
Yeah, probably. But I'm sure they would be supportive. And yes, it's a celebration, really. I think for me, it's a celebration of American culture, and that applies to the Cowboys as well as the drag queens.
I love that.
Yeah.
Alexis.
Alexis Mateo, yeah. And yeah, and they're real fantastic characters. I mean, they're such great personalities, as you can imagine, and very funny. So it was quite a joy to do this, and they were really up for it. Whereas obviously the Cowboys were a little bit reticent. They used to kind of dress up. They know I was coming, and I'd have to drive hours out onto a ranch to find them. And no cell service, that was a big problem. And they would be, they'd ironed a shirt and dressed up, and they would saddled up, and the horse was outside, and they thought they were going to be riding into the sunset. And then I had to break it to them that I was going to come into their home. And they went, really? And I said, yes.
So they didn't find out how the shoot was going to go until you got there.
Not really. Well, I tried to.
Was that by design?
No, it was not by design. The kind of imagery that was inside the home started, and then I said, I want to see your home. But they didn't actually hear that. They kind of went, oh no, just an English photographer, she wants me out on the ranch. So, and obviously it wasn't really important to them having their photograph taken. Yeah, because they were busy, and it was
on to the next
thing. But they were very respectful, and yeah, very game in the end of allowing them into their homes, which they have never been photographed in before.
And I will say that the cowboy images that we've shown on here and that are in the exhibition, they are again, there's an intimacy to them. You can see how they've opened up to you, where it's not closed off. It's not that stoic, stigma that how we think of them.
Totally. I think I would say that also not being American and coming from the outside is a different perspective. Because for me, I'm just totally excited. It's fresh, and it's just nothing that we have ever seen in Europe, and I have huge respect for them, because they put their land and their animals first, and nature, and they're very spiritual people. And I think that also that maybe I represent them in a slightly different way. I'd probably put them on a pedestal.
Well, you do it very beautifully. And this is Mirage.
Yeah.
You said she got very large.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, she's very fun. Oh yeah, so this is Ute Mountain, if anyone knows where that is, which is near Cortez in Colorado, near Four Corners. And that is an iconic kind of Ford pickup truck that I photographed at dusk. And the Ute Mountain is the Ute Native American tribe, and the mountain is meant to be the chief lying down on his back. So his face and headdress are on the right hand side of the picture, and then he has his hands over his chest, and it goes right the way down to his feet. But it's an iconic viewpoint if you live in that part of the world. So yeah, it made a great image. And this is Jeremiah again. So this is the original kind of influence of how I started Dead Eagle Trail. And he's out in the snow with his horses and his dog, which is Traveller, and that was the story. So when he left Alaska, they'd just got a puppy at home, and he went out on his travels, and he literally found the puppy who'd escaped and ran after him a week after he'd left, and was hanging in bits trying to keep up with him. And so he scooped him up, and he basically nursed him back to life on his saddle for 2 or 3 weeks, and until he was fully fit. And then you see him now, and he spent the 2.5 years with him. So Traveller, who's no longer with us now, but did the whole journey with Jeremiah.
From Alaska to Mexico.
Yeah.
And do you still have communication with Jeremiah?
Yeah. And I'm doing another project with him.
Oh, really?
Soon. Yeah, I photographed. So at that time, he returned to Cortez, which is where I photographed him, because he'd got a love interest there. And he married Joetta, his wife now, and this is 20 years old now, and he now has 3 beautiful girls. And so I did a family picture with him and his mum and dad. All girls are on horseback, and they all ride, and they all barrel race. So it's a fully fledged, and he's still cowboying, and he works out on the ranch.
I love that. I love that you're still in touch with him.
Oh yeah.
With the family.
Oh yes, and this is Alexa, who is an extraordinary drag queen, and we went out into the desert. We did this. She I think I'm allowed to say this, yes, because it's very public. She's transitioned since I met her, and that's been really interesting, and I'm still photographing her as well. And yeah, recently I took pictures of her, and she's absolutely fantastic and a lovely person.
And is she also the corset with legs?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
she's the hat. So she makes multiple appearances in this show. Yeah. In this traveling show.
Yeah, that's her again, which is fantastic. I love that image, actually. But and some of them are quite ambiguous, and that's Ron Redford in Texas in the Panhandle. That's the cover of Dead Eagle Trail. That's quite good. Yeah. So this is another cowboy on a bed, which is not where you normally see them. But it was the colours, I think, that I was drawn to in the light. And yeah, it made a great image.
Well, and tell me, so the cowboys are all the color American West that we're seeing. You shot that all on film?
Yes.
That's all 4:5?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you chose to shoot the drag queens digitally?
No.
Oh, that's also film.
All plate.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another reason you have to give them credit for having the patience.
Yeah, it's not a quick and easy process.
No, definitely not. No. Oh yeah, so this is also slightly ambiguous, but not. This is a penthouse in Vegas, of course. Yeah, it made a great image. It was a really fantastic penthouse. And yeah, I kind of decided in this project with the drag queens, which is to use this kind of very kind of nude, fleshy pink color that seemed to keep popping up as I was, and give it some splash of color, because the portraits after a while became quite, they needed something else, because it was kind of monotone, and kind of after a while it felt like it needed like a rush of color. So this is why I started to do still lifes. Oh yeah, and that's Edie, who's famous in Vegas. She has her own show, and she's a successful drag queen. That was at Oscar's Steakhouse, which anyone who's been to Vegas and had one of those steaks will know very well. But that's a kind of iconic place to eat, and look at downtown, and Edie's quite iconic to Vegas as well. So it worked.
Why did you choose to shoot her inside as opposed to all the others that were in nature?
I think because I was changing it up a bit, I'd done about 9 portraits, 10 in the desert, and I just felt like I had to make it more interesting, because otherwise it was like one after another, and yeah, so I changed it up a bit. Oh yeah, that's Pate Menza. His father is a well-known photographer of the American West, Menza. And so he understood what I was doing, although he didn't understand. He just got married and of photographing him on the marital bed, as he said. And you can see behind him, he's got his wedding pictures, and clearly his wife had done the bedroom all in pink. So we call him the love cowboy. But
I see the love
yeah,
on the
yeah,
window. So
yeah, and he was very bemused that I would want to photograph him sat on the bed. But it just works, and it is, the kind of paradox of like the kind of macho cowboy that we understand with this feminine side. And obviously the colours are fantastic, and so I couldn't, wanted for anything better really than that.
that one is, you guys can't see it, it's just off camera on the wall behind me.
Oh yeah, yeah, this is actually at Jeremiah's dad's house, where they've got huge barns and lots of memorabilia and all cowboy things, because all cowboys collect cowboy things, because they're just drawn, they have a passion for cowboying, so you wouldn't you?
Jeremiah, if you don't mind me interjecting, Jeremiah comes from a lineage of cowboys?
His
Or is
dad, not really. No, his
his
dad,
father a cowboy?
yes,
Okay.
but he worked. He kind of has become more of a cowboy in his retirement.
Oh.
And he actually followed Jeremiah down to Cortez, and so he lives now in Cortez.
And what prompted Jeremiah's trip? This
Oh, that's a good
kind
question.
of sabbatical journey that he went on. Was it a coming of age? Was it getting out on his own, starting his own life?
That's very clever, Michael. Yes, it was. Yeah. So basically his parents split up, and he went partying and went off the rails. And he did the trip to kind of getting back on the right road, literally. And yeah, and that worked. And he
found
always
his life.
he found his thing.
Love that.
Yeah. Oh, so this is Jodie, and that is a portrait I did. This is me changing it up a bit. So that I did in a studio setup. Still looking, when you do these projects, you kind of trying to kind of push it one step further, and that's her. Yeah, in this kind of half in the shade, half lit, very sophisticated, dramatic, but you can just about make her out. She was quite shy at the time.
Is this manufactured lighting in the
Yes,
scene?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is very different, but this was me trying pushing the boundaries and making this project a bigger project than I initially thought it would be.
Well, I will say this image jumped out at me as, one, it's a nod back to that early 1900s Hollywood glamour,
Yeah.
the Sinclair bulbs.
Yeah.
Your use of lighting in it is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. Ah.
Tell us about this. I think this is a crowd favorite in the show.
Not surprised. Okay, well, this just made me laugh out loud. Literally, this is not retouched or AI or anything, obviously. I shot this on film, and I was actually this is in a small town called Dayton in Nevada, just outside Carson City. And it is where they shot The Misfits, actually, and it is where Marilyn Monroe stayed which the whole town keeps talking about. And it was on a fence, and it was just classic. And I just went, oh my goodness, I've got to take a picture of that. And there it is, coming soon.
Is it something that they change often, or
I
think
haven't
it's
been
just
back
there?
for a few years.
definitely? I'd
I
be
hope
curious.
so, because it feels quite significant. Oh yes, this is on my travels. I mean, who doesn't love a long road in the desert? I mean, I have many, many images of roads in desert. For me, it speaks volumes. Empty roads, big, wide, 180-degree vistas, and yeah, they just, for me, this always puts a smile on my face and gives me hope. I don't know. It's a kind of, that's a celebration of the American West.
Well, and I think that I mean, the American West is built on the open road calling, the open vast plains calling to travelers to traverse and explore and find new. This is also a crowd favorite. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so this is me wanting the splashes of colour and this specific, very kind of not Barbie pink, more flesh, nude pink tones. And it was in a house that I was staying with in Vegas. And I had these masks that I was using with the drag queens where they didn't possibly want to be recognised, or people. And I threw it literally onto the sofa and went, oh, that's what I'm going to photograph. And it had beautiful light. This is all natural light. And yeah, so I just, yeah, it was quite a therapeutic image to make. This was in Bluff.
This is just
Utah.
over Jane's corner,
Yeah.
Jane's shoulder right here.
Yeah, this is the big image behind me. In the Valley of Gods. So I literally, I met they're a couple, cowboy and cowgirl, and they were really sweet. And so I went out to Utah and they said, come and visit us out here. This is where we go trekking. So we kind of like set this image up, and we did it with a viewpoint, and yeah, and they, you know, it just fed into my American West and like cowboying, and it was a couple, and I like the fact that they were cowboy and cowgirl. So this is Victoria Matteo. So this is drag daughter of Alexis Matteo.
Oh.
And she's doing really, really well at the moment in Vegas. And she wore this amazing dress, which is just a classic, kind of pinched at the waist, and with a big wig. And we shot it out in a ghost town outside of Vegas called Nelson. And you had to have, yeah, your wits about you in a way. They had to have trust in me to take them out, because it took about nearly an hour to get out to this town. And they're going, where are we going? Where are we going? And they're in my Mustang. So it's like, well, we're going to take this picture, but I have to get to one of these images, you know, where they shot the Misfits, and we're going out. So yeah, that was in this ghost town, and I love it.
So how did you find out the different locations for the shoots from the Misfits? Was it going back and looking at Morath's and Erwitt's photos, or
no, it was
is
just,
it all listed somewhere?
No, it's not the actual very exact precise. It's a general. So I knew a lot of it was outside Reno, and all the girls that I was photographing in Vegas, we didn't have time. It was 9 hours to drive to Reno. So I kind of went to similar feeling and similar, you know, outside Vegas, which worked, which was really good. Oh yeah. So this is a cowboy that basically he was freelance, and God, I've forgotten his name. Can't believe that. I've just gone blank. A young guy, and this is his bedroll all rolled up. And oh, you're going to tell me? Good.
It's Justin Ants.
Justin Ants. God, that's terrible, isn't it? No, and I haven't kept touching with him, but he was a lovely guy. And also, a lot of the cowboys I met were older and wiser, and it was really good to do some of the young ones like Ron and Pate and Justin. They're very cool. This is Carney. I'm still in touch with her. This is also in the ghost town. And I did actually do a double shot of her and Victoria together. But in the end, I decided that I preferred them on their own because they were their own strong personalities. And yes, this seemed to sum it all up. This is Cowboys and Queens. This I shot specifically for this project. A flavour of cowboy on a horse, all lit up in Vegas. Cowboys and Queens.
There you got the glitter of the city.
I think that's it.
All right. Well, then that seems like a perfect place to kind of wrap up the talk and open things up to questions, to some Q&A. Let's see. So, Jane, great to hear that you are still in touch with some of the subjects of your works. Any plans to continue photographing the cowboy Jeremiah's family that you mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. Weirdly, I've been talking because the initial commission when I met Jeremiah was published in the Times. So I went back to them and I said, we're going to do this. We're going to go back, me and the writer, Bella Pollen. But they weren't particularly interested because their kind of remit has changed since those days. And obviously they're more into celebrities and various more contemporary things. But we're definitely doing it anyway. And I've spoken to Jeremiah about it because I just think it is a bigger project. And yes, I think it will end up another personal project.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm sure that whether you do it for yourself or for a publication, I'm sure that the scope of this story is probably something that a lot of magazines, a lot of publications would love to share.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I'm not wearing my readers.
Pardon. With the New York Times.
You should.
I know. It would be good for them.
How do you choose the natural settings for the outdoor shoots with the drag queens? And how did you choose the specific technical camera choices of those shots?
The natural setting, well, it was more lighting actually. So it was where the sun was, because they were all shot in natural light. So I basically chose the locations according to where the sun was coming up and going down. And then the plate camera was, well, is my thing and it's a passion, and I love the results from the plate camera, and I love shooting black and white film. And so that gave me a depth of field that you can't get on digital, and you can't get, you have to get it on film. And also it's a kind of discipline that I really like doing, and it works with people because it gives me more time to talk to them, and they're a little bit more focused, and also they're curious about it as well. So it was an experience for them to be shot on plate camera, so it works.
And you have no intentions of going digital anytime soon? Are you going to stick with analog?
Definitely.
I love hearing that. We have a follow-up to an earlier question. What did you find to be the most challenging in capturing the images of the cowboys?
Oh gosh, trying to pin them down on their working day and getting time with them, and there's no self-service, and they don't do emails, and they don't so tracking them down was the hardest thing, was pinning them down and getting them to be there. Yeah.
Well, and were there different challenges between tracking down the older ones versus the younger ones?
No, it was the same. I mean, the younger ones obviously use their phones more, but at that time, so we're talking kind of nearly 20 years ago, 15 years ago, cell service wasn't quite as wide. So most of the places, all the ranches were, they did not have a signal.
Oh, and I have a question for you. So what are the next series that you're working on right now?
Well,
Personal ones, documentary.
Documentary. I'm going to finish the drag queens as a project by themselves. So, which I was doing before we merged them into Cowboys and Queens, and that's Chasing the Hummingbirds. And I'm hoping to publish a book and do an exhibition on that next year. I've been working on a commission in Colorado, which I probably can't say too much about, but that's going to be an exhibition too, with documenting portraits of people in a ghost town before they all disappear. So that's quite special, and that will come at the end of next year. They're in Colorado. And yes, I've got lots up my sleeve, and Jeremiah, of course. I've got to find the time to go back there because he lives in Utah. So yes, a lot going on.
All right, I think we have another couple questions here. So tell us more about your love for analog photography and what is it about film specifically that you find so special?
Well, it's the end result. It's basically, there's a depth to the image that you can't get per se on. I mean, I know digital is quite, it does everything now. And there's relatively, but it's the depth on analog and the richness and the colors that actually sometimes can't be replicated. And I find that all the little techniques that people do, adjusting their digital files, with a filmic this and that, it becomes slightly homogeneous. And also I think that the film, you have to be disciplined because it's so expensive now. And none of us, all my other, colleagues who shoot on film, we're all desperately trying to find a cheaper way of doing things. And we just shoot less.
Well, it does make you very, I mean, you have to have an editorial eye and be selective about what you choose. There's a dollar sign in your head every time you push that shutter button.
Yeah.
That you have to be cognizant of.
Yeah, exactly. So if I said it's like $130 a shot on plate, if you're shooting a 4x5.
Wow. And what kind of camera do you use?
A Whistler. Yeah.
Okay, and then I had one more question for you. Whenever you do these travels, does your family come with you, or are you traveling alone?
I travel alone. I did take my family with me once, but I learned the lesson.
Just the one time, and that was it.
That's right. Because I can't concentrate, and I'm not giving them time, so I can focus. And back in the day, so at times when I did Dead Eagle Trail, that went on for many weeks, and I did have an assistant to help, and I flew him out. But that's not possible now. There's not, I just do it by myself now.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's everything for the Q&A portion of this. I'm going to turn things back over to Irene to wrap up. And I appreciate you all joining us today and listening to Jane talk about her series, Cowboys and Queens, which is on view here at the Hulett Collection through November 15th. And for anybody that is in New York and can't make it, the show moves on from my gallery to a gallery in New York. Halo Gallery opening when?
The 9th of January.
9th of January. So beginning of next year, you'll be able to see it on the East Coast. And I hope to see everybody here at the AIPAD show in New York next April, the 22nd through the 26th at the Park Avenue Armory.